The night the wallet disappeared was the night everything almost ended. A single father stood alone in a crowded foreign airport, his hands shaking, his eyes red from sleepless nights and worry. Inside his bag was a small hospital file carrying the last hope to save his child's life. But in the chaos of strangers rushing past him, announcements echoing through the terminal, and his own exhausted mind barely holding together, someone had quietly taken the one thing that held his money, his documents, and his fragile plan to save his child. In that moment, the world seemed to collapse around him, not with a loud crash, but with a silent, suffocating fear that he might lose everything he had fought so hard to protect. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Lonely Dad Strong Heart. Stories like this remind us that sometimes strangers become the reason someone survives their darkest day. His name was Rahim, a man who had already lost more than most people could imagine. Years earlier, life had taken his wife during a difficult illness, leaving him alone to raise his young son, Ayan. The boy had been the light that kept Rahim moving forward every single day. Every morning he woke up not because life was easy, but because a small pair of footsteps would run across the house and wrap tiny arms around him. Being a single father had never been simple, but love had a strange way of giving strength even when the heart was tired. Then came the diagnosis that shattered their quiet world. Ayan had a rare condition that required urgent treatment that doctors in their hometown could not provide. Rahim remembered the day the doctor lowered his eyes and gently explained that there was a hospital abroad where the procedure could be done. It was expensive, complicated, and uncertain, but it was their only real chance. From that moment, Rahim's life turned into a race against time. He sold almost everything he owned. The old motorcycle that had carried him to work for years. The small television that Ayan used to watch cartoons on. Even the furniture that had once filled their living room slowly disappeared one piece at a time. Friends and neighbors helped when they could, some offering small amounts of money, others offering prayers and encouragement. Every sacrifice felt heavy, but Rahim carried them with determination because every step brought him closer to saving his son. Months of struggle later, he finally managed to arrange the travel and gather enough money for the hospital deposit. The journey abroad felt both hopeful and terrifying. Rahim had never traveled outside his country before, and everything about the airport, the long lines, and the unfamiliar language made him feel small and overwhelmed. But whenever he looked at Ayan sleeping weakly beside him, wrapped in a thin blanket, he reminded himself why he was there. Fear did not matter. Only his son mattered. The flight was long and restless. Rahim barely slept, constantly checking if Ayan was comfortable, adjusting his pillow, and holding his tiny hand whenever turbulence shook the plane. Around them, strangers watched movies, ate meals, and slept peacefully, but for Rahim every minute felt like walking across a fragile bridge over a deep abyss. He knew there was no turning back. When they finally arrived in the foreign country, everything felt brighter, louder, and unfamiliar. Tall buildings stretched into the sky, and crowds moved quickly through the airport like a river that never stopped flowing. Rahim held Ayan close while trying to manage the documents, the medical file, and his bag. His wallet was in his jacket pocket, holding their money, identification, and the hospital contact. Information written on a small folded paper. For a brief moment, he sat down on a metal bench in the busy terminal, trying to calm his racing heart. Ayan was tired and pale, leaning against him quietly. Rahim looked around, trying to understand where to go next, but his mind was heavy with exhaustion. That was when everything changed. When he reached into his pocket a few minutes later, the wallet was gone. At first, he thought he had made a mistake. Maybe he placed it in his bag. Maybe it had slipped somewhere nearby. His hands started searching frantically, checking every pocket, opening every zipper, looking under the bench, scanning the floor. But the more he searched, the more the terrible truth settled in his chest. Someone had taken it. In a place full of thousands of strangers, the one thing that carried his hope had vanished. A cold wave of panic spread through him. His breathing grew uneven, and the sounds of the airport seemed distant and muffled. Without the wallet, he had no money to reach the hospital, no easy way to prove his identity, and no clear path forward. The journey that had taken months of sacrifice was suddenly hanging by a thread. He looked at Ayan, who was watching him with tired eyes that trusted him completely. That trust cut deeper than any fear. Rahim knew he could not fall apart. Not here. Not now. He walked around the terminal asking for help in broken words and gestures. Some people tried to understand, others simply walked past in a hurry. Security officers listened but explained that finding a stolen wallet in such a busy place would be extremely difficult. Every passing minute felt heavier than the last. The hospital appointment was scheduled soon, and delays could mean losing the treatment slot they had struggled so hard to secure. For a moment, Rahim sat on the floor beside his son, feeling the weight of helplessness pressing down on him. He thought about everything he had given up to reach this point. The memories of selling his belongings, the nights he had stayed awake worrying, and the promises he had silently made to his son that everything would be okay. Tears filled his eyes, but he quickly wiped them away because he did not want Ion to see fear in his face. Yet life sometimes tests people at the exact moment they are closest to breaking. And sometimes, when hope feels completely lost, something unexpected begins to move quietly in the background. An elderly airport cleaner had noticed Rahim earlier when he was searching desperately around the bench. She had watched from a distance, sensing something was wrong even though she did not understand his language well. After finishing her section, she slowly approached him, her face showing concern. Rahim tried to explain what had happened, using gestures and the few words he knew. The woman listened carefully, then pointed toward the security desk and encouraged him to come with her. What Rahim did not know was that earlier, a young traveler had found a wallet near a seating area and handed it to airport staff. It had been waiting at the lost and found counter, unnoticed among many other items. The walk toward the counter felt long and uncertain. Rahim's heart pounded with a mix of hope and fear. He did not want to believe too soon because disappointment would be too painful. When the staff member opened a drawer and pulled out a familiar brown wallet, Rahim froze. His hands trembled as he reached forward. Inside were the documents, the money, and the small folded paper with the hospital's address. Nothing was missing. In that moment, the overwhelming relief felt almost unreal. It was as if someone had given him back not just a wallet, but the future he had been afraid of losing forever. He held it tightly, closing his eyes briefly, whispering silent gratitude for the stranger who had chosen honesty instead of keeping it. But the challenges were not over yet. Rahim still had to reach the hospital, navigate a new city, and face the uncertainty of a complex medical procedure. The days that followed were filled with anxiety, long hospital corridors, and moments where hope and fear stood side by side. The hospital environment felt intimidating at first, with doctors speaking in unfamiliar accents and machines humming softly in the background. Yet there was also kindness there. Nurses who gently reassured him, doctors who patiently explained the treatment plan, and volunteers who helped him understand the paperwork. Slowly, Rahim began to feel that he was not completely alone in this strange place. The surgery day arrived like a storm cloud hanging over his heart. Hours felt like years as he sat in a quiet waiting area, staring at the floor, holding the same wallet in his hands like a symbol of everything they had survived just to reach this point. His mind replayed the journey again and again, wondering if fate had brought them here for a reason. When the doctor finally walked toward him with a calm expression, Rahim stood up so quickly his legs almost gave out beneath him. The moment stretched into a silent eternity before the doctor placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The surgery had gone well. There would be recovery ahead, but the hardest part was behind them. That night, Rahim sat beside Ion's hospital bed watching him sleep peacefully for the first time in many weeks. The city lights outside the window shimmered softly, and for the first time since the airport incident, he allowed himself to breathe without fear pressing on his chest. Before we reach the ending of this story, I have a special request for you. Please write in the comments where you are watching from and one kind message for single parents who are fighting silent battles every day. Weeks later, as Ion slowly regained strength, Rahim often thought about how close everything had come to falling apart. A stolen wallet could have ended their journey, but one honest stranger and one caring cleaner had unknowingly changed their destiny. Sometimes the difference between tragedy and hope is just one act of kindness from someone we may never meet again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and support the channel Lonely Dad Strong Heart. Your support helps bring more real and emotional stories like this to life, reminding the world that even in the darkest moments, kindness can still find its way through.